velkommen igjen til en ny Min praksis-episode i denne serien som Etter Kristus inviterer folk til å snakke om praksiser som har fått stor betydning i livet deres. Og denne gangen skal vi prate med ingen ringere enn Mark Scandrette. Welcome, Mark Scandrette.
Great to be with you, Papa Stian.
Yes, my good old friend Mark. I mean, you are like the godfather of Etter Kristus. I'd have to call you that, because what would we have been without you?
Well, you far exceeded me. I'm a proud papa.
Yeah,
if I'm the godfather.
You're the founding director of Reimagine, called a Center for Integral Christian Practice. You've written, how many books have it been? 5? Yes? 6? Yep. Yeah. And you can also call yourself an international speaker.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, I tried to call myself an international speaker once after I, visited Macedonia, visited a friend, and he asked me to speak, and then I was an international speaker, something like that. But you're the real international speaker. And you live in San Francisco.
Yes.
Yes.
Your favorite city, other than Oslo.
Yes, maybe even better than Oslo, probably. But we could talk about that another time. But I think San Francisco is also an interesting thing to start, because even like since the beat poets in the 50s, and the flower power, a lot of the new impulses in the West has come from your city. Even now with Silicon Valley, and back in the 80s, for me it was the Bay Area thrash metal. All the impulses come from San Francisco, it seems. And maybe also this pull towards a more holistic, practice-oriented Christianity. And you have wanted to talk about poetry writing as a spiritual practice, or practice in general. Why poetry writing?
I think poetry functions a bit different than kind of narrative or didactic writing. And, if like what we're talking about is relating writing poetry to spiritual formation and why that would be helpful. And I think the arts in general and poetry in particular it's an integrative practice, where if I'm writing poetry, I often have to be in the present moment, and it's connecting language with what I see and what I feel inside. And it kind of brings a lot of different things together: thoughts, feelings, smells, sights.
Would you call it a sort of a meditative practice?
Yeah, I think it can be very, very meditative or contemplative, for sure.
And like you said, we talked about your 5-6 books, and even when I read your books, and when I have been going to your learning labs, even the word learning lab and the Jesus dojos and the name Reimagine, like it seems like you, like everything you do and talk and write, like the poetry is integrated in everything of that.
Yeah, I think words really matter, and language kind of gets worn out. So a word can start off sounding really fresh and vital, and then over time, it just doesn't wake us up anymore. We have too many associations with it. So for a long time, I've been interested in, can I find fresh words for describing human experience that keep kind of awaken imagination when we say them, instead of just us ticking through to old associations. Yeah.
And maybe also this has something to do with you staying in San Francisco. It's a city where it's not a very popular thing to be a Christian and to go to church and all that. And some of those old words are maybe also just stopping people from taking part in what you're actually doing.
Yeah, I think it's both insider and outsider. For when I'm talking to someone who doesn't have a Christian background, they wouldn't understand the old words, the Christian words anyway. So it actually helps me to have to try and explain my faith experience in language that isn't what I would call parochial, you know, that's everyday language instead of special language. And then for people on the inside who do share a faith with me, I think it helps us have a much more robust connection when we can find new words to describe our common experience too.
In a lot of your learning labs or Jesus dojos, same word, same, or two different words, same thing. Yeah. You also introduce the poetry writing to people who haven't done any writing at all.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we had two reasons for it initially. One was, you mentioned San Francisco historically was, there was a movement here called the Beat movement back in the late 1940s. And it was a time after World War II where a lot of people were depressed. It felt like the end of the world. And people came back from the war, you know, struggling with mental health. And these young guys like Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac drove back and forth between New York City and San Francisco saying, what's life really all about? And they had a very loose way of using language. A lot of their poetry was very rambling and narrative and didn't follow the normal sentence structures or rhyme, but it was their way of exploring the meaning of life and their experience. And I think even more broadly, they were interested in the connection between East and West. You know, the Western mind is didactic and propositional, and the Eastern mind is more experiential. And so as a Christian here in San Francisco, I was like, I'm mostly used to the didactic propositional use of language. And if I'm going to live out my spirituality here and connect with others, I need to learn to speak in a different, in a more poetic way. So that was part of it. And then we also realized that even when we pray, if we use the same old words and phrases, it doesn't evoke that much, and it's not very memorable. So I started taking people on walks with me, and we were, the big project was, I want to connect here and now with what I know about eternal spiritual realities. And so poetry is a great way of grounding, of doing that. And so we would get, you know, some of us maybe are more creative and had a background in music and would naturally, poetry come easy, but we often had people who were like, I'm an engineer or I'm an accountant. I am not a poet at all. And we were really surprised to find out what would be unlocked inside of those people when they would try and write poetry. And it wasn't just that it was helpful for them to do it. Their poetry was actually pretty good too, as a result. They surprised themselves.
Yeah, it's really awesome to hear someone's poems that have never done it before, and you know, it can be pretty good. But some of these poems you also, like, you took it to the stage, like literally to the slam poetry nights, and you did actually like perform them, and yeah. So would you like to do one of those?
Sure. Actually, Stian, I found some old photos of you and I at a poetry thing together. We were at Page Street Center.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, you were in the room.
I almost didn't remember that.
But that was one of those examples where, you know, in a space that's not church space, poetry can be a way of talking about the things that are most important to you without dominating the space, you know. And you and I were at this community center that served homeless folks, and I could share a poem, you could share a poem, or anyone could share. And it was more of a conversation than one person owning the space and controlling it. And it made for a really beautiful dialogue of a very diverse group of people when we were doing that. Do you want? Are you hoping that I'll share the like the reimagined poem?
Fingers crossed.
All right, I'm happy to do that. I wrote this poem in about 15 or 20 minutes, and it ended up becoming kind of a signature poem for me. It goes like this. In my mind's eye, I am flying high across the sky, swooping in and out, dropping low, touching the ground of city streets like a spirit of God hovering over primordial waters of lump clay earth. I am waking up. I am daring to dream again. I hear the voice. I hear the voice. I hear your voice over the waters saying to you and to me, I am here. The hidden whisper of love, that beautiful story you long to hear. Be still, sacred scared child. Awake, awake from your stubborn, numb slumber. Open those sleepy eyes to my morning day light. It will not burn away any good it finds in that humble, cracked heart. Reimagine. Reimagine life with me. Look and see, taste the splendor of my blooming spring garden. Rest, weary home. Weep, weep while you can, while you still feel, while the pain is still real, while my love still heals. Reimagine. Not fiction and full color, humanity and divinity live in concert together. The I and the we making sweet synergy. It's the song we all long to hear. Let the aria resound. May the earth shake with the reverberation of your ancient, apocalyptic, prodigious creativity. Reimagine. Reimagine all our voices in harmony with yours, Lord. Samba, rumba, rimba, afro, Cuban beats, Italian opera, salsa, Latina, Tai Chi, mariachi, three-chord punk rock bleeds in the symphony, the trance, trip-hop, hip-hop, doo-wop, swing, big band, bleeding heart, acoustic folk, Middle Eastern dirge, zydeco, howling blues, and the salvation songs of plantation slaves, spiritual singing. We shall overcome. Yes, we shall overcome. Reimagine. A spiral, whirling miracle of you and me and us, swept up in our Creator's making. Reimagine.
I learned this from you. Thank you, Mark. That's beautiful. Oh, great. Now I have it on tape.
Sorry, I messed up just a little bit on the little bits there.
Yeah.
Forgot a word or two.
Well, it's just even more authentic then.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking about one metaphor you used in one of your books. I think it's in Practicing the Way of Jesus, or Jesusveien in Norwegian. You used the metaphor about the museum and the studio. Like this.
Yeah.
The museum is the clean place where we go to get inspired. And then we go back to our studios to experiment, to paint, to, do whatever we want to do. A messy place, and you use this metaphor as also for the church or for the Christians, that we go to maybe it's the clean books, or the could be the Bible, or even the Sunday service, but where we get our hands dirty and messy, that's the studio where we actually try to come up with new ideas and new practices and new ways of trying to find out how we can follow Jesus in here and now, in our place, in our time. And maybe, I don't know if maybe I'm just spinning off of your thoughts now, but maybe 50 years from now, you could end up in your museum, where your poem can be maybe even cleaner than it seems right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was me just spinning off your thoughts.
Every once in a while, I'll go somewhere and find out that they've turned one of my poems into the liturgy, like at a more formal liturgical church. And it sounds kind of funny to me, that it's put in that form, but it's a compliment, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. You should take that as a compliment. I also would like to talk a bit about your word on the street series you have going on in social media. Tell us about it.
So my first book was called Soul Graffiti, and
great book, by the way.
And I love I used graffiti or street art as the metaphor for the book, that the message of Jesus comes to us not like a billboard advertisement, but in the gritty, real places in our lives, just like street art does. And if the message of Jesus is only for the fancy places, for the fancy people, it's very antiseptic. But and that's why I like street art, is that it's beauty and communication right where we live. On an abandoned building, or etched onto the sidewalk, or a sticker slapped onto a train or a bus. And so I have I guess the last maybe 6 or 8 years I've been documenting a lot of the things that I see that inspire me. And I love walking, and I also travel a lot. So I probably take 3 to 10 pictures a day of little words that I find on the street. Sometimes it's like straight up street art, and sometimes like just a word scratched into concrete that I saw somewhere. And then I don't, it's, obviously I'm being very selective. There's a lot of words on the street that don't inspire me, or that I don't think speak to the human condition. They're angry or, whatever. But I try and take the ones that I think are important and broadcast them on social media. Yeah, I guess it's one of my disciplines.
Yeah, it's definitely, you could call it a spiritual practice in a way. Maybe it will end up in a coffee table book.
Maybe.
One day. Yeah. I just got served you an idea there.
Yeah. I don't know if my iPhone is taking good enough pictures for a coffee table book, but
well, for street art, that can work.
Yeah.
All right, Mark. I think we're at the end of our talk. It's been great. And as I've said to you on and off record several times, I'm very grateful for having you as a friend, but also like to have been so lucky to just meet you and Reimagine in San Francisco, and to get all the ideas that I'm so lucky that I can actually work almost like a full-time job now with trying to help people into practicing the way of Jesus.
Awesome. It's great.
So thank you, and we'll see you soon. Hopefully we can connect physically soon again.
Maybe hopefully in the fall.
Hopefully in the fall.
October, yes. November.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Peace
Great
out,
to
brother.
be with you. Yep.
Bye.
every time I come to your house, you're always playing this instrument.
Well, I'm a frustrated musician, Eric.